Hey everyone, today I'm going to go over an exploit that's really easy to implement into your game. It comes up in almost every session. Last video, I went over GTO poker really quickly. Very important to understand theory. Theory can not only unearth things that the human mind can never figure out, it's important to understand when we exploit where the base strategy is, where we are exploiting from. Exploiting is super powerful, and it's where you'll make most of your money in poker. Especially true versus weaker regs and recreationals, as they deviate much farther from theory, and more importantly, they don't counter exploit as well. Like versus stronger players, like one of the exploit we're going to go over today, it's a little bit more difficult to execute consistently because they will make adjustments, they will play back more. All right, let's dive into today's exploit, which is thin value betting. Thin value betting, what I mean is value betting what theory would suggest is too low-end value bets. Against weaker regs and recreationals, they will not play back enough. They will not be mixing enough strong hands in their range, so you're going to have a very smooth line versus them when you thin value bet. You're just not going to face as much pressure back. That's why, in theory, they typically don't want to value bet the hands we're going to go over today, because a good strong player will find check raises, they will find bluffs, they will mix in value in their range. So, but against these weaker players, it's just going to print money. So let's go over the hands. We start off with open raise here, and recreational goes for the very small 3-bet. It's just an easy call to start. And they start off with a block bet again, very trivial spot so far. It's easy continue. I decide when he checks the turn to go for a smaller bet. I just think there's a lot of random air in this range, so we can really just target that with a lot of our one pair region, and it gets to extract some value, fold out worse. And on river, it's a very murky river. I think a lot of people kind of just check back here. In theory, we're definitely supposed to check back when the flush comes in, the straight comes in. Really, it's about polarizing a range at this point with shoves, something like straight plus. So I think King 6 in theory really does not want to go for value, but I decided to go for a smaller type half pot bet. Again, this is versus a weak player. I don't expect them to expose me here, and I just think their range is really capped at this point, more than theory would suggest. I don't expect check raises very often, certainly not on the bluffing line. So I go for a very low end value bet, and I do get called by ace jack off. So it works out well. And in theory, this is a 3 big blind losing play. That's $18 is 3-6. But versus making the adjustments that we're just not going to face as much on the check raise line, this is actually making us 6 big blinds. That's like the definition of exploiting. Like, we're making an adjustment that's actually making us a total of 9 big blinds versus what theory said. That's $54 extra in our pocket. If we get kind of scared and just check back, that's money that we're leaving on the table. So yeah, thin value bet right here versus a weaker player, it's just going to work really well. And let's go over the next one. So the next one here, we go ahead and go for the 3-bet, get called, and it's kind of mixed strategy to start on the flop. And we're really just checking it down. We have a very medium type hand. There's really not a lot to say. So in this river, theory does not want us to bet. This is too low end. We're going to face, if we go for block back, we're going to face raise a decent amount. There should be like flushes in this range, obviously like pocket sixes. And if we block bet, they can even go as far down as like ace king with ace of hearts, which wouldn't have too often, but really the shoving range can open up when we block bet. I'm under the thesis that that's not going to happen, so I go for the small bet and go for very low end value. I knew at the time that was probably not theory approved. I didn't expect this player was a weaker player. I just didn't expect to get a lot of pushback, and they do end up calling a 9-10. And this is another spot where like theory says we should be losing about a half big blind here, and we make some adjustments for the fact that our opponent is not. They're not mixing enough of these strong like flushes and 10 jack and pocket nines. They don't have kings or queens really at this point. So I just don't expect the same type of raise line that you would see in theory, that we're actually gaining a big blind here. So we add another big blind to our pocket. That's another $6. So we're up to plus $60, 10 big blinds. On to the next hand. So this next one here, we go for the 3-bet, and our opponent 4-bets, we just go ahead and flat. And this one, we kind of just check down to the river. Again, we could bet turn, we could bet flop. We decided to check this time. When our opponent checks 3 times, in theory, it's not terrible to bet, but theory generally doesn't want us to bet because we're just a little too low end. This opponent should have a lot of 10x in theory, and a few other stronger hands, but mostly like 10x and ace king is kind of the range here, which is, I think, not correct. I think this is mostly ace king with a few nuts, like pocket 10s or something like that in the line. But I think a lot of like ace 10, king 10, which theory suggests this opponent has, is very unlikely. I think a decent amount bets flop, and then some may still bet turn. Even if not, once we check twice, I think this opponent is going to just go for value mostly. And I just don't expect a lot of 10x in range. So that to me opens up the fact, and I don't expect like ace king to check shove, which should be happening in theory. So again, it's just a spot. I don't expect to get a lot of playback, a lot of pushback, and I just expect to get called by ace king like 1 out of 2 times or whatever it may be. I just think that ace king is definitely going to go for some hero calls here. So we just go ahead and go for the bet, and our opponent calls with aces. And we don't lose this pot. Like, we lose this pot here, but from expected value, this justifies our whole thesis. This is a huge blunder not to check shove. Like a 20 big blind blunder. That is a massive blunder. This hand, this is obviously a weaker player, needs to get check shove because we have hands like this. And that's even not counting the adjustment that we're making. So that's what I'm kind of talking about, is like, you just don't get the pushback, because if our opponent check shoves, then we may need to make a decision, call, which we'd lose obviously, or fold. It's just not a good situation for us. So we end up losing more value. But when our opponent just plays really passive with these aces, it really justifies to me the thesis that kind of the construction of the range that I thought was going to be here. So we gain another 7 big blinds by betting river. It obviously doesn't work out in this exact hand, but that's, if we simulated this 1,000 times over, we're gaining 7 big blinds. That's another $28 in our pocket. So now we're up to 17 big blinds and $88. Okay, last one. So this one's a multi-way pot. We go ahead and just check flop. And when our opponent from the big blind checks, so now button and big blind are both fairly uncapped, at least how I expect this hand to play. So I think our hand's pretty strong at this point, and we go ahead and go for a larger bet and get called. And then river, again, like in theory, our hand's pretty indifferent. It doesn't generally want to bet. It's not like a blunder to bet, but it's the same thing as we've gone over these other hands today, is I don't expect any pushback. Any strong type hand in this range, be it 2-pair plus, has likely have already put chips in the pot before I had a chance to bet turn. Now there will be some queen X, like 2 pairs in this range, even some queen X club in the range. And I think like occasionally like jack 8 type hand that we lose to, but the question isn't do we lose to worse? The question is, how often are we getting check raised, and how often are we getting called from worse? You need to put all that into the calculation. And again, I just don't expect a lot of check raises on this river. I think this is predominantly brick draws and 1-pair region, like 7x, 3x, 2x. Like they flat after a call from the button, right? So people are gonna probably flat pretty wide here. So I do go for the low end value, and it does work out this time here with the jack 3. And we add another blind and a half. So in total, we add 18.5 big blinds for a total of $94. That's significant in just 4 hands. I think these spots easily could come up twice in a session, these type of situations. If you play 3-4 times a week, and that's like 200 sessions a year, you're essentially could be adding upwards of 2,000 big blinds. If you play 2-5, that's $10,000. Like, this is a very significant exploit that you need to be considering. And I feel it's important to mention again that this is mostly versus weaker opponents. The stronger opponents occasionally can throw this in, depending on who they are, but they will play back at you, and it'll be you'll put yourself into a lot of difficult spots, and that's why theory generally doesn't want to do that. So keep that in mind, but against weaker opponents, this is going to pay off handsomely. It's an exploit that you need to be making, but it is just one of many. So in the future, I'll go over more. There is a lot of exploits that we should be making and thinking about. Hope this video is helpful for you. Let me know if you have any questions about this exploit below. I'll be happy to answer. If you can subscribe and like, I'd really appreciate it, and hope everyone has a good day. See you later.